and welcome to
King Edmunds Radio.
You're listening to Faith Plummer
And Alex Dexter Mills.
This is the radio station for King Edwards.
We'll be producing once a week a 20-minute radio broadcast for you to enjoy, and you don't have to be at school to tune in.
That's right, the broadcast will be accessible from our school website and will be available for a whole week.
It is also now available on our own website, which is kingedsradio.wix.com/kingedsradio. Hello and welcome back to another exciting jam-packed series of King Edwards Radio. It's series 4, our 4th series. Welcome if you're new to the school and you haven't heard of us. We are King Edwards Radio. For the holidays we have a sport festival known as Sport Rwanda, and for that I composed the Sport Rwanda anthem. Some people didn't hear it, so here's your opportunity to hear the charity single known as Support Rwanda.
Aba Rwanda, Aba Rwanda, Aba Rwanda, Aba Rwanda. Aba Rwanda, 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 Aba Rwanda. Wherever you are around the world, whatever you do, spare a thought. Wherever you look down the street, it is not quite what it seems. King Edward VI, raising money. King Edward VI, plays sport. Connections build and support is shown for Sport Rwanda. Support Rwanda. For Sport Rwanda. Helping people in Rwanda. For Sport Rwanda. Support Rwanda. For Sport Rwanda. Helping people in Rwanda. Our Rwandan friends came to stay. They competed in the Olympic Games. Fires keep burning in the night. Fly the flag for Rwanda. King Edward VI, raising money. King Edward VI, plays sport. Connections build and support is shown for Sport Rwanda. Support Rwanda. For Sport Rwanda. Helping people in Rwanda. For Sport Rwanda. Support Rwanda. For Sport Rwanda. Helping people in Rwanda.
so you're listening to King Edmunds Radio. We're joined by Jo Churchill, who's our Conservative MP for Bury St Edmunds. Welcome, Jo.
Thank you. Hi.
So can you describe a typical day for any MP?
With difficulty. One of the fantastic things is there's no typical day. Essentially, when the House is sitting, I will usually be in, for example, last week we sat for 5 days. Most weeks we sit Monday to Thursday. Your day on a Monday starts technically with prayers at 2:30 in the afternoon, because we vote on that day at about 10:30 at night. However, I tend to be in the office on a Monday around 9:30 in the morning, because that gives you a few hours just to be clearing your desk, signing letters, that sort of thing, talking about campaigns that you perhaps want to drive forward on, that you're very interested in, and so on. The following day, you get in, and interestingly, last Monday, for example, we were voting at 1 in the morning, because if there's a lot of amendments and things going backwards and forwards, it's not a typical day. But you can pick all this up on Parliament Live on the TV, well, if you want to, because it's not that wildly exciting. And then on a Tuesday, we have prayers at 9:30. And we finished about 7:30, but again, last Tuesday, it was a very contentious day. There's a lot of bills being pushed through at the moment. So we were voting at 10 at night. So we'd been voting at 1 on the Monday, 10 on the Tuesday. On the Wednesday, we have PMQs on a Wednesday. Now, some of you may or may not know that we have behind the seats, behind the green benches, you have little place cards. And so if you want a place where you can hear and where you can be seen, because everybody likes to know that their representative is actually sitting, taking notice and actively participating in democracy, you put your prayer card in. But if you don't go to prayers, you then, it's a bit like having a towel on a sunbed. You lose your chair. So there's no, and the doorkeepers are really strict. If you try, I sneakily tried to write one for a colleague of mine the other week, and they went, "You're not allowed to do that, Mrs. Churchill." And he's a very nice doorkeeper, and I said, "Oh, I didn't realise." And he said, "I think we both know you did." And yes, I sort of did, but she'd sent me a text. So you're not meant to bags a seat for somebody else. It's a first come, first served. You put your prayer card in, and then when you have prayers, again, interestingly, the speaker comes in, and the reverend doing prayers, you turn round, and it's meant to stem from when if you were Catholic and you didn't want the whole of the assembly to know that you were perhaps making a sign of the cross or whatever, so you have your back to the speaker. And there's all these quaint traditions in there. And then, so on a Wednesday, Prime Minister's questions. This week, for example, we had questions. PM came in, obviously very historic this week, because we've had a change of opposition leader and the front bench, and we were all very keen to see who was lining up on that front bench and so on. And then you have questions. It starts with a statement. You all listen to that. Very often we'll have ministerial statements. We've had one on the refugee crisis, for example, this week, and the various ministers from various departments may make a big statement. You then, for example, and I think the next question you're going to ask me is about select committees. Yeah, you have committee work. Now, within the Palace of Westminster, in the old part, there's a second chamber called Westminster Hall, and there's secondary debates go on in Westminster Hall. So for this, for example, which we call ourselves, so this week we've done one on magistrates' courts in Suffolk, because my colleague up in Waveney, Peter Aldous, and I both have threats to losing our magistrates' courts locally, and access to justice locally is vital to both of us. When calling those debates, a minister has to be in that debate, so you get the ability to tell them that you are not happy and why. So your day is this week, after Prime Minister's Question Times, we then met people from Operation Grip-Rock who had helped fight the Ebola crisis. I'm on something called the Armed Forces Parliamentary Scheme, which means I spend 15 days a year allied to the Armed Forces. So I went and met people that I have been to the Defence College with and out in Akrotiri with and so on. And we greeted those very brave people who had worked so very hard on our behalf to help contain what could have been a global threat with Ebola. So no typical day.
Sounds very exciting. What was it like when you first managed to get into the House of Commons?
It's a mixture of incredible... It is. It's a huge privilege, and it is. Some things are very exciting because you get the chance to do things that you may never get the chance to do. And I'm a great believer in seizing the opportunity. We're not all brilliant at the same things, and we all get different things past our door. So it's hugely important that we take and make the most of any opportunity, you know, like this today.
Did you find the other MPs welcoming when you got into the Commons?
Hugely. Something that I am incredibly proud of is the diversity of my intake. As a Conservative and as a party that is often pilloried for the fact that we don't follow quotas for women. And that is a very conscious thing for us. If I have ever gained a job or something has happened because somebody has given it to me, does it have the value that I would place on it if I'd fought for it? And we gave our maiden speeches, and there was a sense of pride amongst our intake because Scott is he was a postman until the 7th of May, and he made us laugh in his maiden speech because he said he was delivering not only his but his opposition's leaflets as well. Johnny Mercer, who was a soldier, Caroline, who came in from a teaching background, Maria was a cancer specialist, Tanya was a surgeon, and all these skills are coming at several of us who ran our own companies, and all these skills are coming to that place, and they are much more valuable for trying to impart information. You know, we have a lot of issues in and around the delivery of social care. How great that there are in this new intake care workers, nurses, doctors, people from a local authority background, all who have things to add to the debate. So, no, it was brilliant, I thought.
So what was your maiden speech in the House of Commons?
My maiden speech. I did it on July the 1st, and the maiden speech is the only time you get to speak uninterrupted. It's like a convention. And you can choose when you want to put it in, and you just send a little note to the speaker, dear Mr. Speaker, I would like to do my maiden speech on. And for me, I picked the debate on gender pay gap because I actually think it's wrong that the gender pay gap in this country is still 19%, although it's much better for younger women. So my 4 daughters are between 22 and 18. So everybody has either just graduated or is at uni. And until you're about 38, you will earn on a comparative scale to men. Then it falls off a cliff. So that, to me, I felt strongly about that. I felt strongly about the fact that we don't have FTSE, we don't now have any FTSE 100 boards without females, but they're largely non-exec, and there are actually more FTSE directors called John than there are females on the board. Well, that's sort of put it in perspective for me. So it was during that debate, and there's a convention, so I got to thank my predecessor for the great job he had done. I then got to thank you then get to do a sales pitch on your constituency. And I happen to think that I have one of the best constituencies in the country. So therefore I was allowed to brag. We just ignored Cambridge, and I described Bury as the finest shopping destination in the East. And then things that since I was selected and I was living here, just fantastic things that I'd been privileged enough to see. So there's a brilliant cricket club at Woolpit, so I mentioned that. There's tea room at Alder Car down near Needham Market, and a tea room at Wortham, so I mentioned that. I mentioned about education. I mentioned about some of the lovely villages that we've got and some of the vibrant towns, some of the businesses, and then I went on from that to draw in some of the gender pay gap issues that there are, that hopefully, potentially, with some of the work on one of the select committees I'm on, we can do something about.
So can you find your way around Westminster yet, or are you still a bit of, I need a guide to be able to get me around everywhere?
No. I have been seen once or twice coming backwards out of a broom cupboard as if I'm on Hogwarts. Yes, exactly. And the first time I did it, I pretended I was talking to somebody, and somebody passed me and went, "We all know it's a broom cupboard and we all make the same mistake." It is just where there's two doors next to each other. One leads to a stairwell and one is a broom cupboard. So many of us find ourselves in there. You know where you are, Lord's Commons side, because the carpets are different colours. So that's the staff are absolutely incredible, but it's a warren. It's a huge estate and it's a warren. The house is actually trickier than Portcullis House or Normanshire North or parts of the other estate, because you can sort of get your bearing. But it is a fascinating building, steeped in history, that has been designed by somebody who might as well have put a blindfold on me, because I can end up in the wrong place the whole time. So
what's the food like in Westminster?
Right. The food is good, but a lot of the time, like my office is on the far side of the estate, so I have, if I haven't had breakfast, usually I grab a porridge, a bit like you might do from, I don't know, just a cafe in like a takeout pot. I have I'm such a skinflint, I have my own coffee making and tea making stuff in the office, because if not, it's £2.20 a go for a cup of coffee. So you have a cafeteria type of things, you have a couple of coffee bars around, and then you have some restaurants. And then we have a special sort of restaurant that's for members only. And in there, you can't even take your husband or your wife in those. So my husband, when he comes down, we eat in a place called Strangers Bar. And as the name infers, it is strangers to that place that eat there. So, but in the members area, we sit, and it allows us a degree of privacy to have conversations and so on and so forth. But no, it's good. It's good. It sometimes is a tad boring, if you know what I mean, because you want to, when you get home and you think, oh, I just want tomato soup, or I just want beans or something, and a lot of the time you're not eating that sort of food. It's sort of quite prescriptive because it's in a restaurant.
Okay, what is your favourite flavour of Doritos?
Oh, cool.
Yes,
the
good
blue
answer.
one. The blue
I
one.
like that answer.
I've been debating to go for the whole chili thing that they've been advertising, but I just can't. I just need my blue.
Yeah.
So
I like that. That's good.
How do you go about balancing your constituency's views and the government's views?
When there is something, you have different votes for a start. So I suppose the one I draw to mind most recently would be last Friday. There was a private member's bill on assisted dying. Very, very contentious issue, and people they're either pro or against. So those people who felt strongly, and there were several hundred, to write or email me with their particular views, I take their opinions into consideration when I am doing my research, because it is important that I hear the voice, but it is also important that I then go out from that point and talk to, for example, last week I spoke to the hospice. I came into this as a health campaigner and a cancer health campaigner, so I have a fair degree of experience of people who have had challenging ends to their life. So you bring that experience. I spoke to the clergy because obviously it's a very emotive subject. I spoke to members of the medical profession because it would have been them that would have had to have administered, and the papers and the letters from the Royal College of Physicians and from the GPs and from the Medical Council all gave me statistics as to how their populations felt about this particular bill. And a little like you would work through and look at the evidence base when you're writing an essay, the process that I go through isn't wildly dissimilar, because you have to understand where that voice is coming from and the perspective that it is coming from and how it is being framed to you. So you take all those things in the round, and you cannot, I am on a continuum. I cannot be pro and against many of these issues. I take a position. Last Friday was what's called a free vote. So I was allowed to use my conscience and to vote with my conscience, and where I saw the balance of the argument and why I'd come to my decision. Many people thought that with that particular bill, it would help those people suffering from degenerative diseases, acute disability, Alzheimer's and so on. It wouldn't have covered any of that. It was purely those who had had a 6-month terminal diagnosis. And there were, to my way of thinking, it was a poorly constructed bill, which also had a bearing on how I then responded.
So when we watch the news, we often see the House of Commons, lots of shouting, people shuffling, people almost running. What's that all about? What does that entail?
Right. Well, there's the shouting and so on, and all the and all that goes on. That's very often a bit like supporting your own side with sport. You want to keep the adrenaline going. You want to keep your team buoyed up. That's largely what that is about. I don't tend to do too much braying personally, and the first few times it happened and somebody went and all the rest of it in my ear, I did jump out of my skin. But it is part of the atmosphere in the theatre, and I would be very loath to see it disappear entirely. This week, Jeremy Corbyn asked for it to be conducted in a more sort of measured way. And it was certainly easier to hear things going on. Whether some of the energy is lost within that, I don't know at the moment, having only experienced it once. And it was purely during PMQs. Most of the time, we work in a very collegiate way, because essentially people want to get the right things done for the right reasons. So there is a lot of cross-party working that goes on in that place, and of course that is unseen because it's behind closed doors, as it were. So that, what was the second half of that question?
The second half was people, often you see them dash out and things. What's that?
Well, that's like Pavlov's dogs. The bell rings, right? And the bell rings to tell you you're about to vote. So if you're not in the chamber, you may be in your office with a TV screen streaming the debate to you, so that you can be signing letters, looking at constituency work, doing research. The bell goes, and my office is 6 minutes away. So I run. All the doormen laugh at me. I can run in heels like Usain Bolt. I'm across there. So the bell goes, and because if you are not in division, at 8 minutes, the doors are locked. So that goes, you can't vote. And if you can't vote, that goes on your record as having not participated. So it's important you get to the division lobby. So, for example, if I know there's a lot of votes coming through, I very often will work in the library, which is fairly close, which means I don't have to do the 6-minute dash. So you get round it. But in effect, it's a bit like a break bell. You respond. You think, oh, great, lunchtime. Well, for us, it's vote. So, and off we go.
Have you ever missed it?
I have not voted on because I've not been there. If I'm back in the constituency, say, on a Thursday, there may be votes on something else, and you look down. And for example, last Friday wasn't obligatory. Okay, so of the total of 650 MPs, only 448 took part. And I say only because actually that's a huge number. 2/3 of the House, actually more than 2/3 of the House actually staying to vote on something showed how important it was. But you don't have, when you're on what is technically known as a one-line whip, you have the ability to make your choice. Now, yesterday we were on a one-line whip. I was in the House because I'm sat on a bill stage. I'm sat on a bill committee at the moment, the Welfare and Work bill. So I had sessions morning and afternoon, so I was still in the House. So I chose whether to vote on things that were going on yesterday.
That was our exclusive interview with Jo Churchill, who is the MP for Bury St Edmunds and Stowmarket. There's more still to come on this interview, as we had quite a long interview. We had part was the interview, and the other part, which will be coming up next episode, was we had a politics student with us, and we had some questions from politics students and listeners, and we asked Jo Churchill. Through the course of our interview, we managed to cover basically all that is political at this moment in time. We recorded with her last Friday. And the Friday before was a historic occasion with Jeremy Corbyn being the new Labour leader. That's it this week from King Edmunds Radio. We hope you enjoyed this week's episode. We'll be back next week with the rest of Jo Churchill's interview. Thank you for tuning in this week, and we hope you join us again next week with more from King Edmunds Radio.